E agora a gente vai conversar com o Chris Boggs. O Chris ele é presidente da SEMPO, que é a Associação Norte-Americana dos Profissionais de Marketing Digital. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing great. Thank you, Klaus, for having me.
It's great to have you here, Chris. Chris, now tell me, we were discussing last year during an interview about SEO audits and stuff like this, and black hat, if it really pays off or not. And you surprised me these days that you had a big link bust. Can you tell me what happened?
So we talked about originally, I believe, the JCPenney link bust,
Exactly.
and there's been one more kind of big one since then, which was the Overstock.com.
Yeah.
What they did was actually a tactic that I have recommended in the past, which is that they, or similar to a tactic that I've recommended in the past, and that actually a lot of SEOs do recommend, which is to offer something in exchange for a link back, right? So the typical classic way to do this is to maybe offer content or to offer some reason, you know, in exchange for a link back. But what Overstock did wrong was, first of all, they were very public and they were above the radar in doing this. But what they did was they offered discounts to students that would link to them from .edu. Now, you know, this, just like the other JCPenney issue, is as a result of the newspaper, the particular investigative reporter at Wall Street Journal that went snooping around and found this stuff out. I don't know that Google would have found out about this if it wasn't for that investigative reporter. So I think it's interesting because it points out, it shows to me that Google is you know, giving authority and credit to .edu links. I think that everyone knows that already. A lot of people confuse why the .edu links get authority and credit. They think that it's somehow that they're born and they suddenly just have wonderful authority. It's typically because, in the same thing for .gov, a lot of people are linking to those .edus and .govs, and that's what's passing them the authority. The key, I think, and the big problem was that they specifically offered for a link a discount. If something like that comes in front of Google, they can't do anything but slap them on the wrist for it. It ties in, like I said again, and I think we've talked about this before, into what, you know, how's this getting so mainstream now that somebody at New York Times for the JCPenney and now at the Wall Street Journal for the Overstock, that the SEO is kind of coming into the mainstream. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of exciting from that perspective, I think.
But isn't it kind of disappointing that only the dark side, the bad side of SEO is coming into the media, and never a high quality work shows up and says, now look what we did, look what we achieved, all based upon quality SEO.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no insult to you as a journalist, but typically the dark side is what sells, right? You know, people don't want to hear some story about a pretty little girl walking down the street holding, you know, with a lamb. They'd rather hear some kind of evil story, right? Oh. So, and frankly, I'm used to it. You know, as SEMPO president, this is something that we as a board have discussed, is how to fix the reputation, or to try to positively influence, you know, the reputation management for SEOs. But the bottom line is that it's our own fault. Mm-hmm. For a long time, there has been unscrupulous SEOs out there that are not only leveraging tactics that may be black hat or whatever, but they're leveraging tactics or charging exorbitant amounts of money for doing nothing. Okay. So the problem is that more and more of those stories go out, right? And there, you know, you start hearing about SEOs being called snake oil salesmen. You hear about shady SEO tactics. You hear, and it's interesting because there was definitely a tone in those articles about, like, ooh, SEO is a big game of finding the next way to cheat, right? It's certainly, I think, if you're in a competitive industry, there are ways to try to give yourself additional value from an SEO perspective. But you know, typically, and all the white hats out there will say, hey, if you stay white hat, eventually it will come to you. The problem is that the journalists pick up on the black hat stuff, they pick up on these kind of stories, and like you said, it's unfortunate, but the ones that get the greatest visibility are typically the negative stories. But like I said, this is something that I'm used to, right? I'm used to SEOs kind of having a bad name within the marketing industry. I think that hopefully over the next 5-10 years, we as a community can do something about that, either by openly chastising the real evil ones that are out there, the ones that are ripping people off, or simply by sticking more towards a code of ethics, much like Bruce Clay has, for example, on his blog.
And is SEMPO doing anything, I mean, towards setting a standard for the industry, issuing qualifications, something like that?
This is a subject that's come up for years. And in past administrations at SEMPO with the executive committee, the decision has been to stay away from that because of the unwillingness to somehow alienate part of the industry, right? The idea was that who are we to set the standards? If someone wants to go out and do business, as long as he's sharing the information with his clients that this could be a negative tactic, for example, then that's fair, right? I do feel that SEMPO does have a role in this. There are other groups out there that also feel that there's a need for this and that they're starting to move towards that. So it's time for SEMPO really to either latch on to another group that's working towards it or to come up with our own set of standards. And standards may be too much, right? I've in the past advocated the idea of creating a list of tactics and then the tactical risk rating for each one. So, if you do something as simple as changing a page title, there's zero risk there, right? Unless you stuff it full of something stupid, right? But then if you are doing buying links, there's a risk associated with that. What is the potential of that risk? So setting standards is a difficult thing since the industry is still only 10 years old. I believe SEMPO is the group, the biggest and largest worldwide group for search marketers, but are we the right group to set the standards for search engine marketing? I hope so, but I don't know that we are exactly there just yet.
And have you been in conversations with Google and other search engines about official qualifications?
Yes, in fact, we were, I don't want to, betray anyone's trust or anything, but we have discussed with search engines the idea of maybe combining on a certification process. So having certification for search engine optimization or for paid search. Now, of course, there already is a Google paid search certification, but I think that they, for example, would probably be willing to work with us towards creating more of a third-party, seemingly neutral certification.
And now tell me, if I'm a SEMPO member and I damage my client's image, excuse my French, I destroy his site or something like that, is there any penalty previewed within SEMPO? Nothing? I mean, nothing happens, really.
This is not something that's happened that I know of before. I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but it's never been brought to our attention, right? That somebody that's a SEMPO member did something very bad which completely destroyed someone's business. I think that would be an interesting and difficult decision to make, right? When it comes time for their renewal, do we reject them or do we simply kick them out and give them their money back? I think that if the story came out and it was somehow tied in to him being a SEMPO member, we would need to, from a reputation management perspective, do something, right? I don't think that, I don't know what that is.
How does SEMPO relate to the Interactive Advertisers Bureau?
IAB and SEMPO have had discussions in the past about ways to collaborate, but we're really pretty separate entities and we kind of go about our own business.
Okay. The fact that New York Times, for example, can't rank first for its own content. Another content scraper simply ranks higher than the New York Times does. Do you see any relationship between the Panda update and this happening?
I think the Panda update, you know, a lot of people really focus in on the sites that have lost as a result of the Panda update. One of the key things to look at is the sites that are winning. You know, the whole Panda update is really based on having humans teaching machines how to rate content, right? So it's not perfect, but I think that you know, what we've seen so far, and fortunately I'm also with an agency, Rosetta, we haven't seen a negative impact on really any of our clients, except for one that's a potential, and that one is a big brand that has a lot of individual units that are brick and mortar type units, right? So their content is susceptible to potentially being seen by a machine as being, you know, duplicated or spammy and so forth. So it's dangerous because certainly there's going to be the occasional example of you know, New York Times not being able to rank for its own content, but at the same time I think overall the Panda update is doing a better job of providing relevant content for the most part. eHow is another great example, right? It's a lot of people feel that the Panda update and then the subsequent revisions of it were targeted at sites like eHow, because you know they have the problem with eHow is they have these videos and then they make 5 different videos about the same subject and everything. It's really done for SEO, but eHow is one example. If you look in the travel industry, in legal professions, there's a lot of tactics out there that are being used that are very obviously content development just for SEO, right? It's not for the user. So I think you know, the overall meaning of Panda, which is to sort of automate human quality assurance, is a good thing, and it's going to continue to help improve the user experience of visitors to search engines.
And the Brazilian Newspaper Association released a recommendation to its associates saying, all right people, we're going to adopt a no snippet policy and or a total ban from the news bot. Do you think this is the right way to react from something when you feel like Google is stealing content from you or something like this?
You know, I'm sorry. I think one of the key things there is that Google, as much as everyone wants to think that they're sort of public domain and everyone can do whatever they want with Google and Google should do what the people want, yeah, so we just talked about user experience being their positive motive and that's everything, but it is down to Google as terms of what they want to do, right? And so it's their search engine. If they feel you know, that particular content or you know, should be blocked, for example, then it probably should, right? I think that they're not making decisions lightly. This is not something that where Larry Page or Sergey Brin woke up one morning and said, oh, I want this Belgian newspaper out of there. So there's probably some bigger reasoning behind it than what, you know, we typically see in the press. And obviously, you know, this is another opportunity to sort of paint Google as being a bad boy, and everyone loves to bash on Google, right? So I personally don't think it's that huge of an issue because it happens all the time to non-news sites. So it just happens that it's a news site, so they're the ones that are able to make it kind of a bigger deal, and it becomes worldwide news relatively quickly.
Do you think that the entire news industry has the power to take on Google?
Well, the problem is that it's a symbiotic relationship, I think, there, right? And I don't think that that's the right question to ask, because it shouldn't be wanting to take on Google. They should be wanting to find a way to better coexist, to find a way. What does Google want that makes its user experience better? What does the newspaper want that makes its content better, or potentially a better choice for the one that should be indexed? I mean, you see a lot of problems nowadays. If there's a big news story, how exactly does it get ordered, right? And there's 2,500 articles related to a particular topic. It's very inconsistent. It's not like the New York Times is always first, and then the Washington Post, and then the Wall Street Journal. And some of that is through personalization, certainly, and you know, the types of results that are customized for the user. But right now, I really feel that it's a symbiotic state. People are more and more often going online to consume news. Yeah. We know this. We know that newspaper sales are dwindling. Yep. So they have to find a way to work together. I don't think that there's going to be another, you know, search engine that's going to be coming out called Newsel or something like that, right? Which is a much better place to find news. So they have to find a way to coexist and work together, I think, especially the big players out there that are putting out a lot of good content.
Do you still consume printed news? Do you read printed news?
When I'm flying, when I'm taking off
when you're flying.
And coming down.
How much are you willing to pay for online news? Do you pay anything for online news?
I don't.
All right.
I don't. I mean, I pay for my internet access, so technically, you know, I'm paying for online news, but I don't. You know, what I'm willing to pay is if I trust a news source, is I'm willing to give them my email and let them market to me. You know, trusting and hoping that they're going to market in a way that's going to be very, you know, relevant to me. So
but they won't see a nickel out of you, from you. They won't see a nickel. I mean, paying for content. You're not subscribing to the New York Times now, paying $15
No, I wouldn't. I personally wouldn't. There's plenty of people out there that I think would. But I think that content, you know, the reason that I have banners that I have to look at, or I don't really even pretty much see, is because those are the people that are paying, you know, for that content. I don't need to pay for it.
Okay. Now the last question is, if you were a news editor and you knew that Panda is just around the corner, which would be the main aspect of your news portal you would take care immediately?
Trying to make sure to differentiate my spin on the story, right? Ensuring that I'm not doing the same AP block. For example, AP or Reuters, you know, they send out a post and then either the whole thing gets reprinted online or offline, obviously, or maybe they take 2/3 of it and then create a little bit of unique content around it. I think, and I'm sorry AP and Reuters, but from a search engine perspective, that's not a good thing, right? You need to get your writers to be creating original content. And that doesn't mean simply going through the AP or the Reuters article and rewriting it sentence by sentence, right, and having it match up. It means getting your reporters to go out and actually do some work and write a story.